Hello and welcome back to the Burnt Pancakes podcast. I am your host, Caite, and each week I am sharing a new conversation to remind moms that everyone burns their first pancake. On today's conversation, I have two moms. I have Arlene Hunter and Caite Palmer, and they are the hosts of their own podcast called Barnyard Language, where they share honest talks about running farms and raising families. Arlene is a mom of four in Ontario. She is a dairy farmer. And Caite is a mom of two in Iowa. She is a beef and sheep farmer and also works remotely full-time in tech. Together, they're going to share about their lives on their individual farms, how living rurally was somewhat isolating when they first became parents, and what it's like raising kids on a farm. After hearing this, I wanted to pack my bags and move to a rural farm where my kids could just run around and be crazy, but maybe not necessarily get up at 5 a.m. to milk cows. Anyways, I think you are going to absolutely love this podcast. They are such a hoot to talk to, so interesting. I love hearing about where our food comes from, and what it's like being a mom on a farm. So stay tuned for this conversation and also check out their podcast, Barnyard Language. Arlene and Caite, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
I'm very excited. This has been one that I've been like really looking forward to. I've started listening to your podcast since booking this, and you two are so fun. So I'm ready to like pick your brain all about farm life. What you call it? Not raising kids. You call it. I have it written.
I'll do it. That's fine. I got it. Honest talk about running farms and raising families. That's
love
right,
it.
yeah.
I love it. So my mom grew up on a dairy. And so she has all these stories of what life is like on a dairy. And then here we are in Southern California with like a little patch of grass and my crazy boys running around. I'm like, that was the life. That must be the life. So why don't you start us off by introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your family and your farm and where you are.
Sure. Well, I'm on a dairy farm, so I'll start because that sounds like something that you're somewhat familiar with.
A little familiar.
Yeah, that's right. So my name is Arlene and I'm in Eastern Ontario, Canada. So I'm in that space. If you know Canada at all, between Toronto and Montreal, I'm in that zone. And I have 4 kids. And so my oldest is 18 and has just gone off to university. And then she's our oldest. And then I've got 3 boys who are still at home. So they're 16, 13, and 9. And like I said, we live on a dairy farm. So this is my husband's farm and he's 6th generation. So if any of our kids decide to stay here, they'll be the 7th generation of our family on this piece of property.
Wow.
We milk 80 cows. So mostly the black and white ones that people recognize from the packaging. We have mostly Holsteins. And so milking 80 cows twice a day. And then we raise all of the animals that will become milking cows. So we usually have between 180 and 200 head on the property at any given time, from newborn babies right up to older ladies. And then we also grow crops. We have about 700 acres and then rent a couple hundred more. So we grow corn and soybeans. The soybeans are all to sell. The corn, some of that we sell, some of that we keep to feed our cows. And then we grow lots of hay because cows need lots of that too.
Busy,
Caite, you're up.
busy.
Okay, Caite, I live in far northeast Iowa, so we're the not flat part. My husband and I run about 300 acres with his parents. We raise Arlene, I went out and counted the other day, 35 Katahdin hair sheep, so they don't grow wool, they're just for meat, and we're hopefully, knock on wood, going to start lambing anytime now.
Oh, so it's like busy season.
I'm super patient, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah.
We also have, I think right now, 17 cow-calf pairs. We raise Normandy beef, also for meat for sale. We raise corn, beans, oats, and other small grains and hay that we both feed our livestock and sell. Our kids are the 5th generation on this farm. They are 7 and almost 6. Of course, the 7-year-old keeps telling me she's almost 8, despite the fact that she's been 7 for like 2 months. And as I was telling Caite before we started, my kids gave me viral pink eye. So if I sound like crap, that's what I'm blaming it on.
Love it.
Yeah. And
mom life.
Oh, and my husband and I both work full-time off farm as well.
that was one of my questions I was going to ask was, is this your like full-time day, quote unquote day job? Okay. So what do you do daily and how do you manage farm life and working life?
Um, First, to clarify, very, very few American farm families make the majority of their money from the farm. So the money that supports most American farms is coming from off-farm work,
Really?
which leads to a whole host of other problems, because the community support that was there previously for farm families isn't, and we're having to, work off farm. I work in software, which is really handy because I can work from home, which means that during things like lambing, I have the flexibility to run out there
Jump out.
and check on things. My husband works for a local feed company, so he's got a relatively flexible schedule, which is nice. The problem with working in egg sales when you also farm is that your busiest times on the farm are also your busiest times at work.
Right.
He spent 22 years at an equipment dealer before this job, so this is normal for us. But
Have you guys
it does
always,
definitely.
since being married and starting your family, have you always been in farming?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. His folks farmed full time, and he was farming just a little bit on the side when we met, and then we've it took us a while to have kids, and so we increased the cows and the sheep quite a bit, because if we're not going to have babies, we might as well go big on the livestock. And between the time that we signed the contract for the cows and the time that the cows came to the farm, we got pregnant.
That's when it happens, right?
It is. And it's good. It's chaotic, but it's good.
So do you have help on your farm then, since you are for full-time working? Do you have people
My
doing some of the
father-in-law
jobs?
helps a fair amount. We have someone that I've realized I have to stop calling that kid who works for us, because when my husband and I got married, this young man was 9 and he
Oh,
is now 21, and it's not really appropriate to call him that kid anymore. Because he's taller than I am and he's a full-grown adult. But no, mostly it's us. So
wow. Okay. And then Arlene, you also have a full-time job or?
No, the economics around agriculture are a little bit different in Canada. I would say also a big factor is socialized medicine means that we don't have to work to provide insurance. So my husband and I are actually both able to be home on the farm. Before we had children, I was working a job in the city. I was commuting about an hour's drive, so 2 hours driving a day to a city job. And after we had kids, maternity leave here is a year, so I took my year
Oh,
off, and then after
wait, I like
that,
my jaw just dropped. A year is your maternity leave.
well, now it's a year to 18 months, depending how you decide. It's gotten longer since I had my
Whoa.
first. Yeah.
Whoa. Okay. I felt
So,
blessed that mine was, I had like the 6 weeks and then I tacked on my summer break. Like,
mhm,
wow. Okay.
yeah,
So you had your
and
nice
it's
maternity
paid.
leave.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. So you
Yeah.
had
So
your maternity leave.
took maternity leave. And then when we were looking at commuting plus, the hours I would be away, plus my husband's work hours, we decided that I'd become a stay-at-home parent to that point. So I was a stay-at-home mom for a lot of years, and he was farming full time, but I will admit that I was rarely in the barn. And if I was, it was usually just in the winter months when I needed somewhere safe for the kids to run around and burn off some steam that wasn't inside my house. So for a lot of years, I was a stay-at-home parent. And then in the last, I'd say 5 years or so, I've been working more on the farm as the kids have gotten older. We also moved to the farm. We were
Oh,
on a separate location, but then when my husband's grandmother moved out of the house that we live in now, she moved to town to a senior's home. And so then we were able to move on farm. And so now those early mornings when I get up to milk cows, my kids are still in bed, but I can walk to the barn and I know that I'm not all that far away if
no
anyone does
commute,
need me.
right?
So
No commute now.
yes, that's right. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah. On snowy days, it's not too hard to walk.
oh, were you familiar with farm life before you got married or?
I was a farm kid. I
Okay.
also grew up on a dairy farm and swore I would never marry a farmer, especially a dairy farmer, because they work too hard and they hardly ever get any time off. And then I ended up meeting one and marrying one. So
Yeah.
never say never, right? I recreated the life that I had growing up, and now I appreciate a lot of the things that maybe as a kid I enjoyed, but thought I was trying to get away from.
Right, right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about like what your day looks like. So you said you get up in the morning, milk the cows. Is that like an everyday, like clockwork that has to happen?
Yes, definitely. So cows, especially dairy cows, are very routine oriented. So my husband goes to the barn a few minutes before me. He's usually in the barn at 4:30, and I am about 15 minutes later. He goes and pushes in feed and gets stuff kind of set up, and we aim to have the milkers on the first set of cows at 5 o'clock in the morning. So we milk together in the mornings. We are lucky at this point. We have some help, so we do get a few days off. Sometimes we even
You
get
get
a
to
weekend
sleep
off,
in.
which is yes, yeah, once in a while.
What?
I'm also a pretty good napper. I admit that I am a napper, so I will nap during the day, especially when my kids are in school, because I don't love getting up before 5 in
That's
the
early.
morning.
That's really early.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so the cows get milked, and then there's a lot of washing that always has to happen because they don't stay clean, but it's really important that all of our equipment has to stay clean because
Mhm.
you don't want anything in your milk. So then I do a wash down of a lot of our equipment and milk house, and then I get back to the house to get the kids ready for school. So I'm packing lunches and making sure people are up and dressed and ready to go for the day. And then the rest of the day is a bit more unpredictable. It just kind of depends on the season and what the requirements are on the barn. Sometimes I spend some time on the podcast or, run into town to get parts or take a nap or, there's lots of other things that happen. Yeah, just depending on the time of year and the season and what's going on.
And do the cows have to be milked twice a day or just the mornings?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So 5
Well,
in the
because like
morning.
we've all had kids. We know what it's like to
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
feel
For
engorged.
for a yeah, for a time we were doing a 3 time a day cycle, but that we switched back to 2 times a day. So yeah, 5 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon. The goal is to be between that 11, 12 hours apart in terms
And,
of
and remind
milking
me again
time.
how many cows you have to milk every day, give or take.
80. Yeah, give or
80.
take 80.
How long does it
Yeah.
take to milk one cow? Because it's a machine,
Um
right? You put the machine on?
Yes, yeah, it's a
Okay.
machine. So we have 8 machines that are running. They have what's called automatic takeoff. So if you think about as a nursing mom, once your milk starts to drop, then the
Mhm.
milker will sense that and it takes itself off. Um, as long as the cow doesn't kick it off, and then you have to put it back on again. But so yeah, the type of barn that we have, we go to the cows, put the milkers on them. The milkers remove themselves, and then we move that set of milkers to the next pair of cows and
Wow.
move our way down the
Is it
barn.
the same like wah, 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 like the bird?
Kind of, yes,
Very
yeah.
similar. I felt like a dairy
Yeah.
cow at that point. Okay, so here's a funny story.
Yes.
So because my mom was raised on dairy, she had 13 brothers and sisters. There were 13 of them. When my oldest was born, they were all like, his hands are huge. Oh my God, look at his hand. He had just really big hands for a little baby. And of course, my husband goes, oh, perfect for football. And all my aunts and uncles are like, he's got great milking hands. Look at those milking hands. And we were like, what? So they know a thing or two about
Yeah.
milking.
Katie, I feel like I should point out too that like a lot of farm families and like a lot of families everywhere, Arlene is also sandwich generation in that she's doing a lot of caring for the older generation as well as the younger generation.
Oh, got it.
So less napping time than you might hope for
Right.
because
Right.
there's a lot of both directions there.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, Katie, what is your kind of day like? What does it look like on your farm?
After a lot of years of working in bakeries and milking cows for work, I still get up at 5 most days because it's peaceful and quiet, and
Mhm.
I find 5 to 7 a.m. to be the most productive time of my day if my kids stay asleep, which they rarely do. They are
Good
both,
point. Yep.
God love them, morning people like I am. And even worse than I am, they start talking before they're out of bed.
Oh my God.
Our
I was
daughter
just telling my
didn't
husband that this morning. I'm like, Why do they have to talk nonstop? Like 6?
Our daughter didn't start talking until she was over 3 years old. And we ran into her speech therapist at Walmart the other day, and she wanted to know how she was doing because, of course, my daughter won't talk to the strangers, so she's not going to talk to her at all. And I said, I was actually going to call you for a refund because she talks in her sleep now. And she does. She talks in her sleep. She talks all day. She talks in her sleep, falling asleep.
Never stops.
And then she just keeps going in the morning.
Yeah.
Thankfully, she's funny and bright and usually worth listening to, and generally happy to talk to herself if nobody wants to listen to her. So
Perfect.
So then I get up, and this time of year I run out and do lamb checks because, as I said, I'm very impatient. And my favorite thing about this time of year is that you can hear when there are new lambs, especially those first couple, because you can hear, even if the lamb's being quiet, the mama will be talking to it. And it is just my favorite part of probably the whole farming year. I'm going to go ahead and admit it. So it's really getting to me that they won't just pop these damn lambs out. After that, I come back in, feed dogs, feed cats, feed guinea pigs, hopefully feed myself. Ideally, I actually work for my job for a couple hours because it's quiet and I'm focused and there's nothing online to distract me from doing my work, which is nice. And then I get kids out the door while my husband does chores, and then I sit down and work all day. And the nice part is that my job is really flexible, so I can do things like work early in the morning and then take a couple hours off for appointments or a nap or kids or whatever, during
or
the
a
day.
podcast interview.
Or a podcast interview, what have you. Unlike a lot of farm families, we're lucky that we have really good benefits through my work. And so we do have, medical care that actually covers, medical coverage that actually covers medical care and isn't, I find it a little horrifying when I have to reassure folks here, at the pharmacy or at the doctor's office that I know that prescription is $600 and yes, we can cover it. And no, it's not, pay for this or pay the rent or buy groceries for the month, because I do know how unusual that is.
Yeah.
So.
And that you also live in a community that has reliable childcare, because that's it's a huge issue for everyone, but especially in rural places to find childcare is really prohibitive.
Oh gosh,
both in terms of money, but also just the logistics of physically getting your child to somewhere,
Or
I was
someone come to your place. Like, do you ever have like babysitters? How rural are you? Like, how far are you from town or the next like neighbor?
I'm actually pretty close to town. Sorry, Katie.
Nope,
I'm well, I don't know what it is in miles, but I'm just a few kilometers out of town. So my closest grocery store is a less than 5-minute drive. So we've got the best of both worlds. We're 10 minutes to Walmart, but also, we're out in the country a little bit too.
Open space. Like for me, if I yell at my kids, my neighbors can hear me. That's how close we are.
Yeah.
What about you, Katie?
We're about 10 miles from my kids' school and 20 miles from Walmart. We are also close enough that the nearest neighbors can hear me when I yell at my kids, but it's my in-laws, which, growing up until I married someone whose parents lived on the same farm, I was horrified that people would live on the same property as their in-laws. And we're very, very fortunate. My in-laws have made a real point since my husband moved out of their house to have boundaries that we are adults. And some of my in-laws have done better with that than others of my in-laws. Especially, we moved into the house that they had lived in for the last 25 years. And so I think for some of my in-laws had more of a challenge with not walking into the house. But
I could see that. Yeah.
One instance of me walking out of the shower in a bath towel and having my father-in-law standing there was enough, because I was like, I'm
Boundaries.
in my house. So
boundaries. I'm glad I had my towel on.
Yeah. But it's great to have my in-laws so close.
That is nice. Do they help with the childcare?
Some, they're both older and, it's not their job to raise my kids,
Right.
but it is nice that they see them at least a couple times a week generally. So
Oh, that's
they have a regular relationship with my kids. It's not just a Christmas and Easter kind of thing, which is really nice.
they're like involved in their lives. What
Yeah.
about your kids' chores? Like my kids, it's like clean the back room, pick up your bedroom. Do they have farm chores that they have to do?
So mine are older, like I said. My oldest is away at university, but she actually plans to work with us this summer.
Mhm.
So she is crazy about cows and wants to work on the farm. My boys are less crazy about cows, but are motivated to earn money. And I mean, I don't know if there's a right way to do it, but we are trying to separate the farm from the family a little bit in terms of the chores that happen in the house are for the family, and the chores that happen in the barn for the most part are paid. Not all of them and not all the time, but say things like when they've gotten a cell phone, we've said, there are a certain number of chores that you do in the barn that pay for your cell phone plan, or anything beyond that, you get paid an hourly wage like our employees
Love
do.
that.
So yeah, so my 16-year-old currently has kind of one standard afternoon chore that he does every day. And if he can't do it, then his next younger brother does that. And then just because of the times they get home from school, the high school that's out earlier than the elementary school. So he has kind of chores to do in the afternoon. And then my 13-year-old, he goes out and does barn check at night. So kind of that last look around the barn, see if anyone's calving, scrape down stalls, push in feed, that type of kind of last look around the barn before the humans and the cows hopefully go to bed. Um, I mean, the cows will still maybe have babies while no one's there at night, but then there's just less hours where there haven't been eyes on them, kind of between when he checks them at night and when we get up and are out there in the morning. My youngest, he's only 9, so it's not as frequent. It's more of a come and help me with this. He doesn't have too many unsupervised chores yet.
Nice. What about you, Caite?
We're in sort of the same place as Arlene, except that with our kids being younger and just coming out of winter, in the winter, they don't really have farm chores because it takes longer to get them dressed and out the door than it does to do the chores. Um, but we're also at the point of trying to make farming fun. For a lot of families, it's become kind of a punishment. And I mean, on the one hand, a lot of folks can't pay for hired labor and there's no hired labor to hire. So the kids kind of had to help,
Default.
which is understandable and it's fine. And other families have other priorities and it's totally, their business. But I feel like something we've talked about is that I don't expect my kids to come to my day job and work for free. And farming is essentially the same, whether you're what your expectation is about whether the farm is a family thing or whether it's a business and how that impacts what you expect your kids to do. But also, my kids love, we have chickens and they like to gather eggs and they like to ride around with daddy in a tractor and feed cows and that. But we're still trying to make it very much something that all of us are doing because we like to do it rather than, you know, daddy said you had to, mommy said I had
Right.
to.
I feel like that
Yeah.
sounds like my boy's dream. Like, let's go ride around on tractors and run around. I'm sure they would get over it very fast if it was, required chores, but that sounds so fun. What would you say is the greatest like pro of raising kids and families on a farm, and maybe what's a disadvantage? What's hard about it?
I think kind of like Caite said, and this isn't necessarily connected to the farm, but I also live across the road from my in-laws, and that the intergenerational kind of spirit that works into this place. I mean, my father-in-law is in his 70s and he still feeds calves. So when my kids are in the barn, they also get to see their grandfather and they get to see their parents and they get to see that their work also has value. And there is something about taking on responsibility and seeing that your work is achieving something. And I mean, there's also nothing quite like new babies, whether it's a lamb at Katie's place or new calves at my place, there is something pretty sweet about seeing your kids interacting with baby animals.
That's neat. Okay. Have you ever had like a birthing disaster? Like to me,
Oh
birthing
yeah.
animals, like, ooh, that sounds, has there been like, do you have to call a vet? What do you do?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah. I
Mhm.
mean, we have our vet actually comes to the farm every other week. We have regular what's called herd health checks. So he
Okay.
comes and does ultrasounds to see who's pregnant and who's in calf. Kind of is our way of
Mhm.
our terminology, and check on anyone who's sick or anything. But that's yeah, there's definitely we have 24-hour on call vet service. So if there is a requirement for, I mean, my husband can do a lot of things. He's been a
Mhm.
farmer his whole life, and he's in his mid 40s now, so he's seen lots of different things. But there's still those cases where he can't get a calf out. Sometimes if it's twins and they get twisted up in each other, or just the positioning can be off. So yeah, definitely sometimes cows need C-sections. There's scenarios where a calf maybe has died, and then that's not always that easy to get out for
Mm.
different reasons. So yeah,
Gosh,
it's
you have so much
definitely.
sympathy for those lady cows. Oh,
Oh
I
yeah,
could
for
see that.
sure. And
Like, you
those
guys
first
are
few days when you
amazing.
yeah, those first few days when you're milking them and their udders are just full.
Yeah, I feel you,
Yeah.
girls. I feel you.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
Okay, and then what is a disadvantage or something difficult about being on the farm?
I guess the one thing is, as much as there is some flexibility because we're self-employed, there's also the inflexibility. The cows are going to get milked on Christmas morning, and they
Yeah.
get milked before our kids open their presents. And we might be able to book a vacation, but if the people who we hire to come and work can't for any reason, or something happens, it's down to us and our family, because this is our job, and these are our animals, and it's our
Mhm.
responsibility to look after them. So there's definitely been times where you have to cancel things at the last minute, or things you don't get to do the things that other families do, because just because it's a holiday doesn't mean that the chores stop. And the
Right.
cows don't always come first, but
That was
a
one of
lot
the
of
questions I had was
times
how do you take
the cows have to come
vacation?
first.
Yeah. So vacation,
Yeah,
you have
so
to really
for
plan
us,
ahead.
yes, yeah, ours is there's a lot of strategy too, not in the dead of winter because then things freeze up, not during harvest or planting because everyone's too busy. But like I said, next week our kids are on their spring break. It's March, and that's not the worst time of year. It's not super cold. Hopefully, there still could be snow. You never know. But yeah, we've sometimes tried to do kind of a March trip. We do have some employees, so then we give them extra days off in the weeks before and after, and to kind of hopefully sweeten the deal and try and do work ahead before we leave, and extra work when we get back, so that they just have to do the bare minimum while we're away.
Interesting. All right, Katie, what is like one of the pros, the advantages of being on a farm?
Well, I will say first that having beef and sheep is a lot more flexible than having dairy in a lot of ways, because having milked cows for a couple of years when we first got married, dairy cows get big mad real quick if you are late
A
at
minute late.
all. And yeah, and I mean, honestly, if my boobs were that full of milk, I'd be real pissy too. Like, I can't blame them. But bad things start to happen if you milk cows late, where, I mean, if we feed our cattle an hour late, like they might be mad about it, but nothing is actually wrong. They're just
Hmm.
pissed off. They're not even hungry. They still have other food. They're just,
They
in a
want the fresh
routine.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Whatever you have is better than whatever they have. I will say, especially with the pandemic and having two very active young children, being able to throw them out the door and just tell them to go away
I'm
is,
so jealous. I'm so jealous.
yeah. I have a cousin who's got twin daughters who are the same age as our daughter. And he and his wife live in Los Angeles and were living in a fairly small apartment
Hmm.
when the pandemic hit. And their
Yikes.
daughters would have been 3.5. And it was, several floors up. And the idea of being stuck inside with that much energy.
It's not natural.
And no, no, that our kids like are son, who would have been 5 last summer, planted his own corn, just out in the yard in a bare patch, and farmed it all summer. And, if my kids want to dig a hole, they can go dig a hole. Nobody cares.
Mhm.
They've rearranged my flower beds a couple times. My daughter has tried to teach the chickens to meditate. It didn't go well, but she had fun. Like, they're free to just go
Yeah.
do whatever ridiculous shit they come up with that they're
Oh
going to
my
go do.
gosh. I
Um,
like envy that so much as my boys. Well, one of mine was throwing a rock as a car drove by and hit a car. And I'm like, if he had acres to play on, he could throw rocks all he wants. But here I'm like,
in all
oh,
fairness, Katie, when I first started working remotely, our son would have been 3.5, just barely, and he put a toy combine through the screen of my work laptop, and I had to message my boss, and thankfully IT said, we carry insurance for this. We assume that when people work at home, things like this are going to happen.
oh, thank goodness.
But apparently this was still the first time it had been a toy combine. But there
Yeah.
are definitely some challenges.
Yes, yes. And mine wanted like just dig, like get out the shovels and dig holes. My husband's like, hey, you're getting dirt all over the sidewalk. Now we have to clean it. I'm like, I just wish I could just throw them outside and be like, go play. Because that's where like they don't get in trouble. They like get along when they're just like out in nature and playing around.
Yeah. We spent a really good deal, but also fairly obscene amount of money on a climbing structure last year, and it was one of the best investments we've ever made.
Yes.
We're the farm that all their town friends come over to because we have, slack lines and ninja climbing sets, and I don't give a shit if they dig holes in my yard.
Right.
So,
like I would love
But at the
to
same
dig up
time,
this whole thing, but Dad's like,
but at the same time, there's a lot of, as the adult, there's a lot of fear and a lot of planning about things like, are they going to get run over? Because that is a very real fear. And we have some starting to get a little looser boundaries with the kids, but accidents happen, and accidents happen very quickly. And especially when you're talking about animals that can weigh as much as cars and equipment like tractors that doesn't stop fast, and the consequences of an accident are generally very, very bad. And so there are definitely, I don't want, my kids run pretty feral, but they only run feral on one side of the farm. And there are some very strict rules about where they can do that. And that is definitely, it's something that I think about a lot and still doesn't feel like I think about enough. But, where that balance is between not being that mom who never lets them out of the house at all and being the mom who never lets them back in the house because it's quieter if they go outside. Yeah. So,
Yes. Now, what would you say is one of the challenges of living on a farm?
Stain removal, boots. We've talked about this a number of times, how boots, I swear to God, they're breeding out there. Like, no joke. There are probably 20 pairs of boots in my entryway, and there's only 4 people who live in my house. Where do they come from? I don't know.
Don't know. But at least they're staying in your entryway, not walking all over your house. Mine, I find shoes everywhere.
Oh no, there's shoes everywhere. The boots usually stay between the door and the kitchen.
They know to take those
sneakers and Crocs and that are everywhere. I think as a parent, balancing wanting them to love this life, wanting them to want nothing more than to stay here and do this thing that we love, and also wanting to know that they're here because they love it and not because they feel duty to the family or whatever. And yeah, just the family activities and things like, our kids already have, sports ball opportunities that I don't really care about. My husband doesn't really care about, but, doing things in the evening is harder because we have cattle to feed. And even if we feed them late, they still have to be fed. if it gets too cold, things still freeze up. There's still these other things to think about. Having a farm feels a lot like having another member of the family sometimes, but having a member of the family with some real mood swings, who occasionally brings home a paycheck, usually doesn't, throws a lot of temper tantrums, and is pretty demanding most of the time. So it's actually a lot like having another child, I guess.
That's funny. Okay, so you mentioned what it would be like for your kids to possibly continue with farm life or not. So both of you have family farms for generations. Do you see any of your kids? Well, your kids, Caite, are pretty young, but how do you feel about that? Like, what if none of them want to take over? Like, what happens then? Or do you see that they're very interested in it and like have a love for it?
I think, like Caite said, I'm kind of torn in that place of my oldest especially, I can see how much she loves it, but also I know how hard it is. And I'm kind of on that in between of, do I want her to do this because I know she loves it, or do I want her to do something else because it's too hard. I mean, lots of days it's exactly what we want to be doing, but it is so hard, and it is such a difficult life in terms of workload and the inability to really have much of a work-life balance. Not that anyone does, I don't think, but and I really do struggle with that concept of intergenerational pressure. And I hope that we don't perpetuate that too much, but I know that it's still there. Like I said, I grew up on a farm, and that farm has since been sold, and someone else is farming on that same piece of property. And I'm also okay with that, because it doesn't have to be my parents or cousins or siblings that are working there. It's also okay for other people to do that job. So if it comes down to it and someone else is farming here in the future, I also think that would be okay. Now, this isn't my family. I married into this family, so there might be other people that have different feelings about that. But yeah, that's a hard one. I really think that they have to be all in, and I hope that they do other things before they come home, if home is where they want to be and where they want to work. And it also means they'll be working with us for a long time, because we've invested in this place, and we continue to pay my in-laws, who are still working here somewhat, and my husband's grandmother is still living, and so we continue to pay her as well. So it's not just the fact that you're taking on a legacy, but you're also becoming responsible for the generations who came before you, because if they don't sell the farm to someone, then you have to support them, because they put their life and their time and their investments back into this instead of other things.
Yeah. What about you, Caite?
Yeah, I mean, like Arlene, my in-laws are, I don't want to say fortunate enough because she worked her ass off, but my mother-in-law had a town job that provided, some retirement savings. But this farm is their life's work. And so this farm has to provide something to them, because hopefully they will live quite a bit longer. They're not that old. We're very fortunate that we got the chance to go to a retreat when our daughter was a baby. I don't think I was pregnant with our son yet, but had the time to really talk about what our priorities were for the farm, because so many farm families get so caught up in keeping the farm with someone with the same last name, or if not the same last name, at least the same genetics. And it becomes such a thing that it tears the family itself apart. And the point of having this family legacy when the family's not speaking to each other. I mean, we have neighbors putting up nasty signs about their siblings in their front yards that have been there for years, about property battles. We have families who, my husband's great grandparents who built this farm, his great grandfather moved up the hill from his family farm and never spoke to them again because of a farm accident that he was held responsible for. And I mean, it's half a mile away, and they literally just never spoke again. So for us to really take the time to set the priorities, that it would be great to have our family here on the farm farming it, but if that doesn't happen, who would we want to have first chance to take it over? And realizing that the highest priority is keeping our family together, and that keeping the farm property in the family is a high priority. Keeping our family farming it is slightly less of a priority, but really laying that out about what is the absolute highest priority, and that the farm is very, very important, but it's a chunk of land and some buildings, and it could be replaced. And it would be horrible and terribly hurtful and sad to have to do it, but it could be replaced. It is just land and buildings.
Can't replace that family.
Yeah. To say that that's more important than your family it's really messed up.
Right.
So
right.
I'll just go out on a limb and say that one right there.
Love it. Love it. Okay. This is going to be a weird question, but your kids have probably, from the time they're born, been exposed to birthing animals, mating, all of that. Is it easier for you guys to have like the talk with your kids about sex and where babies come from, because they see that all the time?
I think probably, yeah. The one thing that happens on our farm is we don't actually have any bulls.
Okay.
My husband had a close call with a bull one time, and we've never kept any male animals since. He was really badly injured. And even at that time, most of our cows were bred through artificial insemination. But that's also one of the first jobs that the kids end up helping with, is when my husband goes out to artificially inseminate a cow, they get to hold the lube and go along with him and maybe hold on to the cow's tail or whatever.
Learning experience, right?
Yeah, exactly. And watch him put on that giant glove that goes right up to his shoulder and inseminate cows. So, I mean, when you live somewhere where semen is a dinner table conversation, and you can see the cats mating in the the alleyway and that kind of stuff. I think that, yeah, like the actual procreation part of the talk is easier, but I mean, obviously we all know that the sex talk is not just about making babies. So
it just seems like such an easier way to like introduce it when they've just been exposed to it before. Like,
yeah, definitely.
Like my boys starting to ask, and I'm like, oh, like I need to prep for this. Yeah. But if you were just like,
hey. It's even surprising the number of adults who don't think about the fact that a cow has to have a baby before she starts to make milk. Like, that seems like a pretty easy one for us, right? Especially, I mean, and once you've breastfed, you can kind of have that, or, have had a baby, then you kind of start to think about it. But there's so many people who come to the farm and are like, oh yeah, so she doesn't make milk until she's had a baby. It's like, yes.
Okay, well, here's the question then. Part. What happens to that calf? Like, if the calf isn't, how long does the cow nurse the calf before she becomes a milking cow?
It depends on the farm. So say like at Caite's place where she's raising beef animals, the calves would stay with their moms for quite a while. Okay. On our farm, most calves are removed from their mother pretty quickly. One of the things that has happened with dairy animals over generations of breeding is that because we are breeding them to produce more milk and they are not actually required to care for their babies, they've become not great mothers in a lot of cases. So sometimes they'll turn around and be like, what is that thing? And try and ram it into a wall. They might be like, oh, I'm tired. I just gave birth, and lay down and maybe lay on it and smother it. Plus they give so much milk that it's more than one baby can actually drink. So we remove the calf fairly quickly. We milk her and gather the colostrum and then feed that to the baby. Okay. And then our babies are kept in a calf nursery with each other. So they are in their own pens, but they can interact with the calves around them, because group housing is good for animals. But if they're right close together, then they start to suckle on each other, which can lead to health problems. So yeah, the moms and the babies are separated pretty early, but honestly, most of the cows don't even pay attention. They're like, whatever.
That's so
Where's my food?
interesting.
And
Wow.
I'm going to lay down.
How
But
many?
like beef animals, because we're raising them to be good mothers, they, they have those maternal instincts still.
Yeah,
How long can you milk a cow for? Like, how long can you keep her producing?
So our goal is to have a calf each year.
Okay.
So she'll milk for say about 10 to 10 and a half months, have a dry period where she's already pregnant. Obviously, they have the same gestation as us, 40 weeks.
Okay.
And so she'll milk for a few months, not pregnant, then she'll be rebred and then have a dry period at the end where she has time to eat and, get
her strength back.
get rested up. And then, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Get her body back. Except she's pregnant again.
Bounce back, ladies.
So that's right. Yeah. So once a year.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. I want to talk about how you two met and started your podcast, because this is so fun. You don't live in the same areas. How did you guys connect?
We were actually both listeners of another parenting podcast, of One Bad Mother. And I, at least as a new mom, had realized how different some of my challenges were as a farm parent, looking at things like cloth diapering, and all these people are saying, well, I can't cloth diaper. There will be poop in my washing machine. There can't be poop in my washing machine. I'd have to get a new washing machine. And I'm like, there's poop in my washing machine every time I do laundry. Like, and just realizing things like I feel bad because I don't even know what the latest, greatest services are or whatever, but like I can't DoorDash a meal or formula or whatever because it's not a thing here.
How do you survive? Oh my God.
Our largest big town has a taxi. I don't think we have any Uber or Lyft or anything and even if they did, they're not going to drive the 20 miles to my farm, and for a lot of farm parents, 20 miles to Walmart is nothing. There's a lot of places that if you're under an hour, you're basically in town. And so I found there's a lot of Facebook groups for this podcast, and one of them is the One Bad Ranch Mom, which Arlene, I believe, is still a moderator of, correct? Unless the podcast is eating up too much of her time. And I found a lot of kindred souls in there and a lot of folks who were incredibly helpful to me as a new parent. And both, one of the big tenets of the show is that we don't judge people, that it just, if they ask for advice, we give it, but otherwise you keep your mouth shut and, tell people they're doing a good job and basically just leave them alone, which is incredibly helpful. And coming from that, and then I had had a mentor myself and been a mentor for a program called the Women's Food and Ag Network, which is a lot about obviously teaching women and non-binary folks farming and such, but they had started a new program that was offering mentoring opportunities to people who had been in production for a while. I'm not a new farmer, but giving them mentoring opportunities for expanding what they were doing. And a lot of folks took that, and went to like more advanced production classes or, greenhouse production or whatever. And I, of course, said, I just want to talk to people, and looked at how we could do that because this podcast was such a great thing for me, but it also didn't fit so much of my life. And so I found a mentor who is Dairy Carrie. Her name's Carrie Mess. She's very active on social media. She's a dairy farm mom from Wisconsin, has 2 young boys, and is very, very good at being honest without being obnoxious. I think it can be easy to get into that trap of, if I explain a little more, people will get it, where some people just aren't your people, and that's fine. Just let them not be your people. But working with her and talking about how to connect with people and talking about doing a podcast and because as this, like, I don't know, minute that I've been talking has proved, I cannot be left on my own to do things like this. So I realized immediately that I would need a co-host, and Arlene was the only person I considered. Which was a little awkward because I'd met her once in person. It seemed a little creepy to Facebook her and be like, "Hey, gonna do this podcast, only gonna do it if you do it with me." And she said no.
No.
And then she said no again. And then I think it was like a week later, she came back and said, I don't think she'd even told her husband, but she said, I know I keep saying no, but I can't stop thinking about doing it. And that was 3 years ago.
Wow.
3 seasons ago. Was it 3 years?
Yeah,
I don't
about
know.
3
What
years.
is time anyway?
Yeah. 100 and some episodes. Yeah.
I was gonna say
Yes.
how many episodes. Yep, there.
Her husband does know now. He found out at some point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we did a count the other day. We're like, did we do 100 episodes? Maybe 101. I don't even know. So definitely over 100. But
Oh, that's so fun. Do your husbands listen to the podcast?
seasonally. So like I
Okay.
said, farming is seasonal. My husband doesn't, he always says he needs his ears in the barn because he needs to know what's going on. So he's not a huge podcast listener, but when he's in the tractor in the spring and fall, or when he's doing hay, he does. So he'll get caught up and chunks. So he's way far behind, but he has listened. And they've actually both been on. We did 2 different Valentine's Day episodes with the podcast husbands. So I think Jim listens more regularly, but he's got to commute. So
yeah, he does a lot more driving. My husband Jim and Arlene's husband Hugh, I think, are secretly besties now.
Yeah,
I know
they've actually never
Jim,
met in person, but someday.
Oh, that's
Jim
so
was
fun.
mailing Hugh a gift this week, I think. So that's very.
Have you
Stay
guys?
tuned
So
for
you
that.
guys met in person once. Have you met in person since starting the podcast?
Yeah, I showed up at Arlene's house for a week.
Yeah, I did
go
know
big
she was
or go
coming.
home.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's not like
met
I
up.
called her from the airport and was like, hey.
Yes, we've met up twice. The one time, both times related to World Dairy Expo, which is in Madison, Wisconsin. So I was going to be there, and Caite doesn't live too far from Wisconsin. And then Caite has come to Canada once, so it's still on my list of things to do in this calendar year to go to Iowa. But like she said, there's some sandwich stuff going on, so I'm waiting to find out when doctor's appointments and all that kind of stuff happens. But it's still in the plans for this year to actually go to Iowa.
Definitely. Oh, well, your lives sound so fun, even though you're like, stuck to your schedules and don't leave as much. It's just fascinating to learn about. So could you share with
Caite,
us?
I wanted to,
go ahead.
I wanted to put a plug in too, because I didn't say anything about giving our kids the talk. We had the author Corey Silverberg on in our first season, was it?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, maybe.
And they wrote a book about like the literal biology of how babies are made, that you need eggs, you need sperm, you need a uterus. And I could probably recite that book from memory for the number of times I've read it.
Read it.
And it's really accessible because there's no talk about the gender of the people involved. It's very accessible for adoption and IVF and all of the other ways that babies are made. And they also wrote 2 books for older kids. So strongly recommend those, because while we do have a bull, we do have rams, our kids see that natural service. There's a lot of things about how baby cows are made and how baby sheeps are made that aren't really what I want to convey to my kids about, 1 male and 20 females and no consent and only when they're in heat, and it doesn't.
And we keep
really...
them apart with fences. Yeah.
Yeah. It does
a little
not
different with humans.
convey. I know for myself, when we were doing fertility treatments, having to call females that wouldn't breed was harder than I expected. But
oh my gosh,
we're in a business where if they're not making babies, they have to go. I mean, they're eating food either way. But there's a lot of things about animal reproduction and farming that are not what I want my kids to learn about human sexuality.
Right. But I love that you shared that book, because I have 9, 6, and 4-year-olds. So your kids are younger too. So it's not too early to like be bringing that up. And I think sometimes I avoid the topic because I'm not sure what to say, but I like the idea of here's a book and this is very just scientific, like matter of fact. This is how it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like too that in the illustrations in the book, there are no genders in the illustrations of the parents involved. And to myself, and especially as someone who, did fertility treatments, and we know people who've done IVF, we know people who've had surrogates and all that, having access to, the science says you need sperm, you need an egg, you need a uterus. Like that's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah.
But the human parts of how that happened can be so different. Right. And finding books where it's not, when a mommy loves a daddy very much and they're married and they have health insurance and a house and, a picket fence, then they can have a baby and you will get pregnant the first try and then the stork comes. There's nothing salacious about it, which I like, that it's just sperm, egg, uterus, baby.
Yeah.
It's very clear.
Matter of fact. Awesome.
So highly recommend.
Love that. I really appreciate you bringing that up because I have been trying to make a list of books that we can get and start introducing. Okay. If we want to find your podcast, how do we search you? You guys on the social media? Where can we find you?
Yeah, so mostly Instagram and Facebook. If you're listening to a podcast, you know where to find them. So we are Barnyard Language, and that's pretty easy to find.
Easy to remember. I love the name.
Yeah, that's right. So it's Caite and I usually do an update, and then most of our episodes are like you. We have an interview with either a farming parent or parenting experts, people who have experience that we think will be relevant to our listeners. So you can, if you're a parent, then you're learning about parenting stuff. If you're a farmer, you can learn a bit about agriculture. And even if you're not a farmer, you can learn a bit more about where your food comes from.
Right. That's really interesting. You would never think I'd be listening to a farm podcast, but each week I'm like, oh my gosh, this lady's in Alaska and she has all these animals on an island. Like it's fascinating.
And even for people in agriculture, we interviewed a fish farmer, and that was one of my favorite episodes because it was like, I had no idea that this is how, we talked about fish sex because it's like, how do you breed fish? Like, how do you, there's so many people growing and raising our food and we don't know how it all works. So,
and bringing a voice
interesting for all of us.
Do you feel like farming is kind of becoming like a lost art or like dying out a little bit? So you're bringing a voice to this.
Well, I mean, in North America, it's less than 2% of the population is actively in agriculture. Now there's, in terms of farm workers, that number is higher. But there's less than 2% of people raising the food for everyone.
For all of us.
Because all of us are eating. So I think it's important to know about for sure.
That's awesome.
We have too, what I find a surprising number of listeners who don't have children or farm. But everybody has a family, or everybody has other people and everybody eats. And, we have a fair number of folks who listen just because, which I find pretty awesome.
Well, you guys are a hoot. I love it.
Just for the witty banter, probably.
Yes, I'm sure that's it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been such a pleasure.
Thank
you very much, Caite. It was great to meet you.
Special thanks to Arlene and Caite for coming on the podcast and chatting with me today. They were such a joy to talk to, and I loved talking about farm life. This seems like someone from Southern California with a patch of artificial turf in their backyard. Sounds like heaven. I hope you enjoyed this podcast too, and if you are loving it, it would mean the world to me if you left me a 5-star review, you followed the podcast, you shared this with your friends, and you subscribed to my YouTube channel. So until next week, when another conversation comes out, I want to remind you that everyone burns their first pancake, so just keep flipping.